Okay, thank you. So what I would first like to do, so let me find out first if Danielle Sandoval is here. Okay, that might change things a bit since she is one of our main events and probably why many of you are here. But I will go ahead and say first, I would like to mention what I alluded to a moment or two ago. Is everybody here aware of the news regarding Council President Nuri Martinez, et cetera? Anybody not aware? Okay, everybody know. Joanne, you are not aware? Okay, can somebody, anybody interested in giving a breakdown? Wow, that was Muriel. Muriel, you're the one who was making the noise. That's so funny. Oh, and I forgot to have our board members introduce themselves. But let's talk about this first. Can somebody please give a rundown for Joanne? Yeah, sorry, we're a very conversational, informal group. So go ahead.
If nobody else is going to do it, I'll do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just don't like, I get very tired of hearing myself.
I just was out all day today and just got back. Sorry.
Okay. For those, a lot of people here know me. I'm Doug Upperhart, president of Coastal San Pedro. So the LA Times broke a story this actually online this afternoon. It will be in tomorrow morning's print edition regarding a conversation between Nuri Martinez, Kevin DeLeon, Gil Cedillo, and the head of one of the LA labor unions, and I would have to go back and refer to the story to find his name.
LA County Federation of Labor.
Right.
Name
exactly.
is something Herrera.
Yes, that's it. And it was recorded approximately a year ago regarding the city's redistricting efforts. From what I read in the article, the recording was made without anyone's knowledge of those four individuals. And each of them engaged in a very freewheeling conversation, including a number of insulting statements about other individuals on the city council, notably Mike Bonin, for example. Some others were named. Statements are astoundingly rude. Not a smart thing for anybody to say, even if you're not being recorded in a private conversation. It will make tremendous waves, I think, as people, read about it and hear about it. I would not be surprised if some folks end up losing some positions over it, particularly Nuri Martinez. It's just broken this afternoon. It is a big story. As someone who's been in journalism for a long, long time, I can tell you this is going to be a big story.
Yes, thank you, Doug.
Thank you. I subscribe. I'll read it. Thank you.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know why the LA Times didn't include recordings, clips to recordings, but Knock LA, and they're the ones who broke the story, the LA Times, but Knock LA has a bunch of clips of the recordings, and it's really worth listening to the audio.
I understand the original recording was posted to a Reddit account.
Right. But right now, I don't think that's there anymore. I think the way to get it, it was on Reddit this morning. Devon downloaded them. Okay. Anybody want to check out the recording? Hit up Devon. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. And
where did you say it's on, Lisa?
It's called Knock LA.
Knock LA.
Okay, Bryant just put a link to the article in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is important. This is going to be fast moving, and it's a big deal.
And Councilmember Bonin, who's one of the recipients of her racist comments, has called for her removal. That's news later today.
Oh, and several, it's lots of folks are, honestly, the story is breaking while we're on this call because council members are starting to weigh in on their thoughts about next steps. So it's pretty intense. Okay, so sorry, that's what I've been distracted by today. I would love for the board members who are here to introduce themselves, and I should introduce myself. I'm Lisa Hart. I'm on the board of the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and I used to chair the Green Committee of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. Muriel, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Meryl Nakar. I'm a steering board member with Lisa. And I was also a former Echo Park Neighborhood Council board member for District 5, but I also chaired the Public Works Sustainability Committee. And I'm also the Transportation Committee for this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel. And Charles.
Hey guys, Charles Miller. I am on the board as well, and I founded the Palms Green Council, Green Committee years and years ago, and involved in lots of sustainability stuff. So good to be here.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, so I think Muriel, if she hasn't, is going to put the community agreements in the chat. And just so you know, Muriel and I will both be prepared to remove people who we think are not following them. That's not something I look forward to doing, but it's something I will do and Muriel will do if we think we need to. So just wanted to be super clear about that up front. Oh, and I will right now, if I think I can do this right now, put an evaluation, a link to our evaluation in the, no, that is not it, sorry. I will have to do that once we've gotten going. I'll put a link to the evaluation in the chat. Okay, so Danielle, are you here? I see Bryant, so I think that you might be here. Bryant, do you know if Danielle is here? Are you perhaps?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking mostly with Danielle Sandoval, who is running for CD15. So I think the news that broke today is very apropos given the conversation tonight. We are, we are reminded in as glaring and as frankly dark a way as possible that the character of our leadership really matters, and that who we vote for and whether or not we vote really, really matters, because it matters who we choose to lead us and represent us. So really excited to have both Danielle Sandoval and Fatima Iqbal-Zubair here tonight. Danielle's running for CD15. Fatima is running for Assembly District 65, which encompasses most of CD15. Their opponents are not, well, we did not hear back from Mike Gipson, Fatima's opponent, but we did hear back from Tim McOsker, who is running against Danielle, and he unfortunately is not available tonight. So since both of these candidates are covering CD15, we thought we would have a conversation about leadership, which we can certainly talk about, how the candidates are reacting to today's news, about sustainability, and about whatever you want to discuss. I'm going to ask both of them to make brief introductory remarks of about 5 minutes, and then I'll open it up to you. I might chime in once or twice, but I'm going to try to be quiet and let this just be a conversation. And then towards the end, as we wrap up with this part, we'll talk about Los Angeles, about the potential for democracy vouchers and what the candidates think about that as well. So let's start with Fatima. If you can start, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and anything else you would like to share with us.
Sure. Thank you so much for having this space, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
And I should have said, this is her idea, and I know her from the Watts Clean Air and Energy Committee. So I feel like, well, it's just since COVID, but I feel like Fatima and I go way back.
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate you having the space. And how long should I take for the opening, just so I can respect the time?
5 minutes at the most.
Okay, no problem. Well, nice to see a lot of people here. I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe. I know a lot of news came out today. I've been out canvassing all day, talking to voters, and so about the issues. And so I will have a really strong statement on what happens soon. We should just call out the comments for what it is, which is they're racist. And no one that has that kind of rhetoric. It doesn't matter if it's behind closed doors or not. That is their mindset, and that they aren't fit to lead. It's as simple as that. So a little bit about me. I am a former teacher, a current youth mentor still to my students in Watts, a mother to a son with autism, a community organizer and immigrant. Running for State Assembly District 65, running as the only unbought and unbossed corporate-free Democrat in this race. I am not running, didn't plan out my pathway in politics, sort of to be in this race, but I came here from the perspective and the experiences of someone living in this district, experiencing the environmental injustices, experiencing our broken infrastructure, experiencing my son with special needs, navigating LAUSD public schools and seeing that they need to be more well equipped, right, to deal with all of our students, and seeing, the public safety issues that are still rampant in our district. So living here, experiencing that, also seeing what my students are going through in terms of the cost of college, parents living paycheck to paycheck, it just should not be happening in the richest state in the nation. We should not have the largest income inequality gap and expanding. We should not have the housing crisis we have. And at the state legislature, and I'm excited to get into this because there'll be a lot of things that we can do in terms of our policy. I was also appointed commissioner by Assemblymember Gipson briefly, because then I decided to run pretty soon after when I kind of found out his record. Look, I'm in this race because our visions are radically different. I support, renters. I support protecting homeowners and lowering property taxes. I support environmental justice. I support investing in our youth and more after-school programs, rebuilding our infrastructure. I also support investing in systems of care in our community, more mental health resources, more, social service resources to really help with the unhoused and what, not just the unhoused, but our children that are in the foster care system, our children that are, that are struggling in so many ways, right? We need resources for them in the community. And, frankly, Gipson has voted against renters' rights, voted against most environmental justice bills. Our district really hasn't improved in terms of its infrastructure. So I'm really running for a radically different vision for accountable leadership, for leadership rooted in community and people over corporations and industry. I will drop my website. Well, I dropped my website in the chat, so feel free to check out, the details on my policy and my solutions. It's very detailed. And I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. All right, Danielle, I would love to give you the same opportunity to make some introductory remarks. I'm looking, if you start talking, I'll find you and I'll spotlight you. How about that? Okay, I don't know, maybe she has left us. I don't see her. So let's open it up, and then if she joins or is here, we can pick up where we left off. Any comments or questions? I have some. If you don't, I have a fair amount, but I would love it if you asked them instead of me or made them instead of me. I just ask that you be succinct and that you introduce yourself and mention your neighborhood council or any affiliation or neighborhood before you start. Okay, if there aren't any, I will ask Fatima this. Fatima, one of the things that I've realized I am not good at yet, although I should. I've done a lot of work at the state level and I've done a lot of work at the city level at this point, but I have never been clear on what is the domain of the state versus what is the domain of the city. So I'm wondering like what you would be doing that whoever wins the CD15 seat would not be doing and vice versa, and what ways the two offices can possibly work with each other. Oh, you are muted. Do you know that you're muted? I'm gonna, okay.
There we go. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I mean, I can talk about that in relation to like every policy, but there is a lot of jurisdiction that the state can give pretty much in terms of laws. I mean, besides, a pathway to immigration, which is something the federal government can do, and overturning Citizens United. And obviously we're seeing, the unfortunate choice by the Supreme Court in overturning Roe v. Wade. There's a lot we can do. And even with, ensuring pro-choice in our state, we see Prop 1 on the ballot. So even with that, there's things the state can do to protect abortion rights. That one of the biggest things, I think, a crisis we face, Lisa, is housing, right? For example. And one thing that I'm happy the state did is to change the zoning laws, right? So we can build more housing, where before it was zoned for maybe commercial or industrial development. I think that's a step in the right direction. So that's one example of what the state has done and can do. The other thing we can do to help out municipal governments is to really increase our stock of social public housing. We haven't built public housing in our state since the 50s. And if we look at a lot of our state, still being renters and, kind of falling at, a really low income level, right? We need to make sure that we have social housing, I think is a great solution. Community-based land trust is a great solution as well, to just have affordable housing. The other thing is that our states never met our affordable housing quota. So we do have to build and build quickly. And so I think removing some of the red tape will help a lot of the municipal governments, LA City Council, in building quickly. The other thing is tenants' rights. We can ensure that, just cause evictions are really implemented, right? And that folks aren't getting evicted, and we protect, folks staying housed, and really try to prevent evictions when they shouldn't be happening. We can ensure right to an attorney for tenants so that it's not an outsized, influence in, kind of having the speculators or the big landlords having the power. Alex Lee had a great bill. Another thing I want to share is maybe end with this. We can't overturn Citizens United because that is a Supreme Court decision, but we can limit the influence of foreign contributions, in our system, and a lot of that will limit a lot of corporate contributions. The biggest contributor at the state legislature above big oil and police is actually developer real estate money, right? So if we can pass a bill in a progressive legislature that can limit the influence of developer money, we will see the right type of housing being built and being built quickly. I think there's a reason that the social housing bill that Alex Lee authored did not pass, right? I think there's a reason that LSAC reform didn't make it to the floor that would have ensured tenants' rights, for example. And so I would be a big believer in sort of at the state level addressing the root of the issue and making sure that we can really get affordable housing, low-income housing built and built fast. And that all of that will help, local governments as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. We see a couple of hands, so I'm going to go to them. Lori, go ahead.
Thank you, Fatima, for that. On the eviction and tenant rights.
Lori, sorry, can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't you all know me? No. I'm the homelessness liaison with the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. I'm not currently a board member, but I was for 9 years. And I'm also a homelessness advocate working with the South Bay City Council of Governments. So I'm very concerned about tenant rights right now. And I know that we have Stay Housed LA, which provides free legal aid. And I've been doing what I can to get the word out. But my concern is the people that need to know about that free legal aid. How do you get that word to them? Because a lot of them are not online. So there should be mailers that automatically go out to everybody who's renting to know that they have these rights. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you first of all for your work, because we need, it's not easy doing the work you're doing. So thank you. Yeah, 100%. I think, I believe, I don't think this passed, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state does not have a registry of where our renters are, right? Is that accurate? Right now, I believe that was a bill, but I don't think it passed or it got on the floor, but that's something, yeah. So that's where we have to start. We have to know, okay, where are our renters, right? First of all, we can't get that information out if we don't know where they are. It helps with what you're saying in terms of outreach, right? Because if we know who they are, we know where they're, we can email them, reach out to them, text them, get them on phone banks and things like that. But I think so that's one idea. The other way is, right now, the reason you see me in the car in the dark is I love getting information the hard way, the old fashioned way, just door to door, right? I want to shout out Council Member Nitya Raman. She does this a lot with helping renters. She goes door to door, right, with her team, I think weekly. And I think that's really successful. It's really old fashioned. It's not easy. But those of us that are organizers know that sometimes the old-fashioned way is the best way to do it, because not everyone has a phone number. I know the Wi-Fi situation in my district is pretty bad. So I would say that is one way kind of on the ground to get that information out. And honestly, having the rental registry, like I mentioned, would be great, because right now we're seeing out-of-state speculators. I just talked to someone today who was a renter in a unit, and she's like really scared because her landlord is selling her property, and basically she doesn't know what the next owner will do, right? And so that also sort of gives the state some sort of element of regulation, knowing where that's happening, which properties are being sold out to speculators and things like that. So I think the rental registry and just, finding out ways that we can organize in our offices, whether that's more funding for organizers, in our office. I don't know if that's happening right now to get the word out door to door. I know that sometimes is the most effective way to do it. But to do that, we need to know where all the renters are. And you're right, we don't always know where the renters are. And a lot of them aren't voters, right? A lot of them aren't voters. So we need to know where the non-voter renters are, right? That's how we would prevent a lot of them, get the information out as soon as possible.
All right, thank you. Joanne.
Hi, I'm Chair Joanne D'Antonio, Chair of the NCSA Trees Committee. And I also have been on the Greater Valley Glen Neighborhood Council's Planning and Land Use Committee for 9 years. I am pretty well versed in what's going on in terms of building, especially in my area. And one of the things that, and because of my work with the Community Forest Advisory Committee, I'm advised of every tree that is either a street tree or protected tree that is requested to be removed. And what I would like to share with you is that when you speed up the building of low-income housing, you are depriving the low-income renters of health because the trees go first. Mm-hmm. And there are two things that I want to point out. One is that when properties get torn down and there's no tracking of how many low-income units have been torn down, and in the city of Los Angeles, they can actually get free density bonuses because those are not taken into account. And we have Stacey Shore, who is an activist in neighborhood councils, is going to Sacramento, and she is going to put forward a bill because the city of Los Angeles won't recognize the people that have been displaced in terms of how many low-income units are put into the new building. So they will get density bonuses, let's say for 8 units, and they may have displaced 8 people. And so now they're getting really a free density bonus. So I wanted you to be aware of that because she's very much an activist, and I think she'll get this. She gets people to write assembly bills for her, so it'll be done. Between that and the trees, it's not that I'm against low-income housing. I think it's important, but I think we also have to be careful because we don't have enough rules about existing trees and demolitions and so forth. So you may want to comment on what I've just presented.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Joanne, for your work as well. Just so you know, we didn't get to talk about environmental justice, but that is a huge tenet of why I'm running. I wanted to make clear that one thing I'm not okay with actually was an issue with the bills I had in SB 9 and 10. And if I was out there, probably would have worked for strong amendments that they bypassed. I think one of those bills bypassed CEQA recommendations. I did not support that. I think one thing, in fact, Joanne, that's missing from the state legislature is that sort of perspective of how do we build more housing but not compromise, the health of residents. I'm a huge supporter of that. And I just want to be clear, I don't support speeding up building to the expense of people sort of like really struggling with their health, because I've seen that. There's been a property of land, not in my district, but, I'm endorsed by Sunrise and LA. And there was a group at Long Beach, her name is Serena, I believe, who's working in some, I think in Signal Hill or some areas, similar situations where there's toxic land and there's development being built. I will not support that. In fact, I have protested for housing that's built, on toxic land. I know you're talking about trees. So yes, including that. I would be very careful in where we choose to build, how we remediate the land, what trees have to be removed and what don't. And I would probably prioritize areas, looking at urban planning where we don't have to remove, right? The the greenery in the area, because I know living in South LA, we have more concrete, and I'm glad of the work of folks like Tree People in my district and Watts Rising, which I'm a part of, because we don't have enough shade. And I know that firsthand. My son goes to one of those schools where it's just unbelievably hot because we don't have enough shade and trees. And so just so I want to make it clear, I would be on board with you, Joanne, and I would love to work with you once I get elected, right, to make sure that we build in the right way. And I think that sort of intersectional leadership on housing is missing. We have folks that want to build. We have folks that, will at the expense of, environmental regulations and eliminating trees and green space. And that's not the type of leader I would be, because if you look at my platform and a huge part of why I'm running, I'll just end with this. The school I worked at Jordan, had lead and arsenic toxicity, unclean water. That's a huge reason why I even got involved in environmental justice. And I know that's affecting a lot of our communities. Like the Jordan Housing Projects was built on top of an old steel factory. And that is leading to a lot of the contamination and health issues. So it is a whole reason I even stepped outside of the classroom. So I completely am in line with you and understand that we have to be very strategic when we decide where we're building housing, and it can't come at the expense of disrupting our natural environment.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before I go to Mindy, I should say that Danielle did text me a bit ago, and she said her computer died and they were going to go back to her office and she was going to have to try to call in. And that's the last I know, just so you folks know as much as I do. Okay, Mindy.
Oops, I had to unmute myself. Hi, so I am from Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council, and since you just mentioned it, I'm also on the board of Tree People. And yes, great. So, and you just answered my question, and Joanne actually brought up my first issue, which was, minute we want to get rid of the red tape, the first thing to go is the environment and the trees, at least in terms of the developers. So I'm glad to hear that that's a priority for you to make sure that you still take care of making certain that the environment is taken care of. The second issue and the second question I have for you is, I think that most people would agree that yes, we need more low-income housing, but the question is, how do you get people to, in terms of you still need a developer or builder to build that low-income housing, and there's really not an incentive for most people to build low-income housing because there's no money in it. So the question is, what kind of incentives, if you're in a position and you're elected, how do you work with the state or with also, with local communities to get those incentives, to get those developers to actually build low-income housing?
That's a very good question, Mindy. And I think, yeah, you're right, because a lot of developers build because of the profit motive, and because they're going to, make more money off of certain development over another. So I think it is the government's job to provide those incentives, and to provide, tax breaks, whatever it would take, right, to get nonprofit develop. And I think that's why, we have nonprofit developers that are doing sort of the work, and we can focus on those. But even with regular affordable housing developers, yeah, we need to provide those incentives, those tax breaks to make sure we incentivize the building. But that is something the government can do and should do. I don't know what more to say on it, but I would support that. I would support that, because you're absolutely right. Like, we have to get folks, not just affordable housing, but we have to build more permanent supportive housing. Like, I know in LA City, we still don't have enough shelter beds, but I think, yes, we need that. But we also need like supportive housing. It's something that we're really lacking in with full services and wraparound services. So I don't know, it's a short answer to your question, but I agree with you. And I would definitely push to bring that. I guess if you're asking like maybe where the money would come from, I'm assuming that could be the question, because housing is a huge issue. Okay, so I'll address that. I think a lot of it is really looking at our budget. I hear from progressives on the inside that our prison budget keeps increasing, and I don't know why, because we are putting so much into that already in our city level, into policing and prisons and stuff like that. If you look at how much LA City and the state's putting into housing, it's not nearly enough. And I think if we still need more, I'm a big believer in, we have the most billionaires and corporations in the state. And a lot of them are getting away with paying much lower taxes, if at all, than a lot of middle-class families and working-class families. So I'm a believer in definitely taxing them so that we can get some of that money, back to the state, so we can put it into, a lot of initiatives and incentives that will incentivize nonprofit developers, affordable housing developers to really focus on the type of housing that we need.
Okay, thanks.
Devon,
Yay, finally. Hi, I'm Devon. I am also part of the Trees Committee, and I'm a longtime NCSA member. So thank you for coming. Fatima, it's good to see you, hear from you. And I've heard a lot about you. I'm actually from Watts, and I know all about the WLCAC, Watts Rising, and I'm familiar. My question is, how can we hold you accountable to fulfill your promises if and when you take Mike Bonnen's seat? Well, not Mike Bonnen's, Mike Gipson. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Oh no, we can't hate on Mike Bonnen. Oh my gosh, he went through enough today. Love Mike Bonnen. Okay. I love Mike Bonnen. I can't speak for everyone else, but okay. And he's endorsed us, so that's awesome. Yes, Devin, thank you for your work again, and for your question. I think it starts with the fact of how I'm running my campaign, right? Which is I'm not sold out to the wealthy developers. I'm not sold out to oil, not sold out to police unions, basically no special interests, right? So I think that it starts with that, right? I hear from progressives inside the legislature that they have lobbyists on speed dial, right? But, folks like Alex Lee don't have lobbyists. They can kind of be really independent when bills are brought before them. So I think it starts with that. That's one reason I think you can trust me more than Gipson, right? The other thing is, look, I'm already talking about co-governance. The Neighborhood Sustainability Council, I hope I'm not missing a word. I think there's a word there I'm missing, Lisa, so I apologize. But this is one of the important partnerships I want to have. I'm not just running for my district. I know a lot of you aren't in my district, so I really appreciate you being here. A lot of the issues we're having with environmental justice, with housing, are statewide. So honestly, I would love, when we win, to consider you all part of one of the groups that I co-govern with. Whether that means I'm able to meet, and when I can't meet, my staff has biweekly meetings and more, especially when session is when we have legislative session in progress. I want to hear your feedback on the bills. I want to be informed by what all of you care about, not just in my area, again, all of you, because I see myself as not just a representative from my district, but we have overarching intersectional common problems all over the state. And that's what I hear from your questions. A lot of the issues you're talking about are happening in my district as well, right? And so how, Devin and everyone here, I hope that I'll have the honor of co-governing with all of you. And you will tell me, Fatima, this is how we want you to vote on these bills, and this is why. And there'll be a lot of times we'll agree, I think, because it seems like a lot of you are rooted in that good work. There might be sometimes I'll say, this is a tough one for me, but this is why I'm going to go and why. And I will give you that respect, right? I won't just have a bad reason or not answer your question. But I hope that answers it. Again, I believe in that model of co-governance, and I vow to do that. And that's why I'm here today. That's why I've shown up for every forum, I might add. Not a hit on my opponent, but it's important. He hasn't shown up for a single one. There's been 4 opportunities, and I think that is huge. I mean, you could at least send a representative, right? And so I think the way I'm running my campaign is the way I lead. But I think the way I lead will be even better because I'll have money to have more staff. So I'll be able to be more available, right? To do these important meetings with community stakeholders, and not the refineries, not the other stakeholders that might be hurting our community because they have profit interests. I'd rather meet with all of you who are doing the good work in the community.
Thank you. I support you. You have a big battle ahead of you.
Thank you. I know, but we're working the grassroots here hard. So.
All right, thank you. Lori.
Hi, Lori Lathrop from Harbor City Neighborhood Council. I'm the secretary. I'm on the outreach program, committee, and outside of the council, I am working to find resources for Harbor City for mental health and substance abuse. And I know that Harbor City really doesn't have any resources. And so that leads me to believe that there has to be other cities that don't have resources. You could go around outside of Harbor City to Wilmington or to San Pedro areas, but there are those that don't either have the transportation or possibly even have the mental stability for the day to be able to even leave their city. What I guess I want for there to be awareness that, you know, there's going to be other cities like us, and what do you feel that you could do to help solve this problem to where maybe every city has resources on how to help, because mental health and substance abuse is really a serious problem, and I don't think it actually gets as much attention as it should.
Yes, thank you again for your work and for your question. You're absolutely right. To my knowledge, you know, I think LA City Council needs like a health committee or department. To my knowledge, they don't have it. So it starts, you know, there as well. Like, you know, at local levels, we need to make sure we have robust, you know, agencies at the city level, right? That are getting information out there, that are providing, you know, health services, that are a vessel for health services. The one thing I'll add overarching, because this is a state legislature, you know, the state has been fighting hard for single payer healthcare, right? People in the state for a long time, long before I even became an organizer. I want to shout out the work of the nurses and so many activists that have tried to pass a single payer bill, and we got really close this time. And honestly, that's why I feel like we need it in our state. If we look at healthcare costs, they've just gotten higher, right? And if we look at access to mental health care, and I know this, you know, autism necessarily isn't a mental healthcare issue. I know it's, you know, more a special needs issue, but sorry, yes, but I do know even then it was really hard to get services for my son, and I'm really privileged to have private health insurance where, you know, I was able to pay for a lot of the services he had growing up. And imagine how hard it is, because even those of us with private health insurance, if you ever try to see a therapist or get mental health care access, even with private insurance, it's very difficult. Medi-Cal also is very, very limited in that. And so that is why I think, you know, one of the whole overarching solutions in terms, because this is a crisis, right? It's not like in one city, it's not in multiple cities. Mental health care, you know, and having adequate treatment and services for it, and also drug addiction is one of the causes also of homelessness, that it's up there, right? And it's a need. So that's why I really believe in the single payer healthcare bill. I hope that it comes back, because I do believe that when we take away the profit margin from the healthcare industry and we center the healthcare workers and the patients, and we don't, you know, attribute a cost, right, at service and to service and for medication, I think that'll make a huge difference. And there are many models that show us how to do it. You know, when I was younger, I lived in Canada. I lived in the first province that had healthcare. Canada did it province by province. And I know there's having some issues right now with pushbacks, but you know, I remember living there and not having anyone complain about access to mental health care or dental or anything like that. And so I do know that's how we have to start. And I think in our country, you know, Medicare for all is going to happen state by state. And I do believe we need to lead the way. It's one of the reasons I'm running. It's another bill that my opponent did not support. He takes a lot of money from the private healthcare insurance industry. I obviously take none of it. And it's a bill I would lead on and author in, because it's an intersectional bill that will help with our homelessness issue. It'll help with our mental health care crisis. And it's needed now more than ever.
All right, thank you.
Let's go to Liz, and then Devon, did you raise your hand again? We might circle back to you, and then I have a question, and then we might move on. I have not heard back from Danielle, just so you know. So go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. I was.
And Liz, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
I apologize.
It's okay. I was the co-chair for Budget Advocates for a number of years. I'm currently chairing the committee addressing concerns in the neighborhood council system from a grassroots level, as opposed from the city and departmental level. Glad to hear you support healthcare for all. Health, the city actually handles housing. The county handles health here. However, and by the way, I'm from Montreal originally, and I lived in Regina for a while. So yes, yay, Saskatchewan. I am appalled by the poor access to healthcare in the United States. It's causing so much grief. It's so expensive. our bankruptcies are astronomical because of it. But it is a state or national issue. So I'm glad to hear that you are supporting it. Joanne mentioned something about outside investors and housing, but this is also a local issue. We need to find a way to make housing a right, not a profit center for investors. How can you do that for us?
%100% there with you on that. You know, oh, sorry. Okay, there we go. Yes, I agree with you that housing should be a right and not, you know, kind of a privilege for those of us that can afford it. How do we make that happen? Okay, that's not an overnight answer. And you know, if I can say I can solve that on my own, that's also a falsehood, right? Let me start with this. There have been great solutions at the state level. And I think we've been able to get some of those bills passed, right? We've changed zoning laws. We've allowed it made it easier for housing to be built. Again, like I told you, my disagreements with some of those bills again, but you know, for the most part, I mean, that's a good thing. We need, again, not bypass environmental regulation. But one other way to get, you know, I'm going to tell you some of my ideas to get the housing built, but I'm going to be honest with you. We have to get an assembly and a legislature that is courageous, right? We have a legislature right now that is not overturning Costa-Hawkins and Ellis. That's pushing a lot of renters out, right? We have a legislature right now that has not been able to pass a full tenants bill of rights. That is an issue. We even have a legislature that hasn't passed a bill, you know, to have a rental registry. I mean, that's a basic thing. So we need a courageous legislature, and part of that is a big part of what I want to do is work with the progressives up there. You know, Assemblymember Lee, like I said, had some good bills to get some of this money out of politics. I haven't talked about my work on the Progressive Caucus, but we worked a lot to work to get the party to stop, you know, taking some of these dirty contributions. But it starts there because, you know, I'm humble enough to say that I am no savior, right? I'm a leader who's running for the people and to be a voice, but I'm not a singular savior. I believe I would need allies up there to really have housing bills that meet the moment of the crisis. That being said, some of the solutions that we should be able to pass in a courageous legislature are social housing. You know, Assemblymember Lee was in, you know, in Europe the past couple of weeks, and I'm about to meet with him next weekend when he's down here. But he had some great ideas for how they've done social housing, right, in Europe and in Austria. That is a great model. You know, how they've kept rents low, how they've kept mortgages low. And we know that this does prevent housing, you know, keeping people housed, making sure their housing secure does keep them, does prevent folks from being unhoused. So I think social housing is a big step in the right direction. In local municipalities like Sacramento, and I believe in the Bay Area too, they've really succeeded at community land trusts. That takes away the profit motive too. So when you say, you know, you're going to have churches or nonprofits or community groups having, you know, sort of ownership, right, of that land. Now you don't have a corporation, right, or a big corporate landlord or a speculator that can just, you know, drive up prices or think about how they can raise their profits. So I think going towards community land-based ownership is the way to go. And a lot of municipal governments in California, well, not a lot, but a few have showed that it can work. And I think we need to follow that model as well at the state level. And I think a huge part of making sure housing is a human right is, again, making sure our renters, many of which we have in our state, stay housed. So what are, you know, the two bills, Costa-Hawkins and Ellis, we need to make sure they get overturned so that, you know, we can not have these loopholes in local governments that are allowing, you know, big landlords to just raise the rents, right? And I do want to say, I have nothing, by the way, against small landlords. I know some of this call might be small landlords, and that's totally fine. And it's not a battle between small landlords and renters, right? I think we need to protect our small landlords as well. I didn't say that on this call, but I think that's important as well. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, but it takes a courageous legislature to pass all those things. And because I know folks in there have tried and they just have not been able to get bills past the Assembly and the Senate. And so we've had great ideas that just haven't been able to be passed and implemented. And that's why it's important to not just follow my campaign and support me, but support others that are doing the good work as well, right? To get those of us in there that are courageous to actually lead on these bills, whip the votes, get it together and get it done.
Thank you. I have a question, which is, what what are your thoughts on the Los Angeles port? Where do you think we are in terms of what we need to do there, and in terms of in order to make it more sustainable? And what would you be able to do in the legislature, if anything, I don't even know, to help make that happen?
That's a very good question, Lisa. And it's been kind of a point of debate because we have a lot of folks that are union workers working at the port, right? And when we talk about things like sustainability, that always comes up. One thing I want to start with saying is that, I'm never for taking away a good union job. Like, we have to start there. Everything we do, even if it's environmental sustainability, has to center workers, right? Passing, and I'm going to share some ideas of what we can do at the port, but doing any of the things that will make the port more sustainable or, our communities more sustainable cannot be done at the expense of workers. So that's number one. That being said, I think there's some great initiatives already being started, like to, electrify our trucks, for example. I know the state legislature had some bills, I think during the pandemic, Lisa, that would have set more regulations on those diesel powered trucks, led to electrification, help them electrify sooner. And those are important bills that we need to pass, right? That's something that is a no brainer, right? Because I know I lived in South Carson by a truck corridor by the 710 freeway, and it was awful. Not only, there's just so much pollution, right? So that's one. The other thing is, I know there was a campaign in Long Beach to get our ships, that are big emitters of also, kind of polluting our ocean and our waters, right? Get them running also on electricity. And these are huge projects, right? You're right. It can't just happen. But the state, with all the funding we have, it had a surplus in the pandemic. We can invest in some of these big ideas, right? Because they're going to impact a lot of our environment and our ability to even have a planet 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. So those are some of the things I would support in terms of some of the work happening at the ports, where folks are working. And I know there's been talk about automation. I don't support that because we don't have to work towards sustainability while taking away jobs. We do have to think about, maybe the jobs of the future and creating the infrastructure at the ports for those jobs, right? Though, when we have some of the new electrification and, things like that happening. So that I'm a big believer in. And I just don't believe that we need to take away someone's paycheck to become more sustainable. I don't think that's fair, especially in the economy we're in right now.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if Danielle is on. I have not heard from her. And I actually don't think our guy from Los Angeles for Democracy Vouchers is on, who I was going to ask to explain and describe Democracy Vouchers. Fatima, are you familiar with that model?
Yes, that was one of the community partners I wanted to meet with because I think it's a great model. If Ji Young is on this call, I know she led the effort at our neighborhood council. Is she still on the call?
I think she's here. Yes, I do see. I know she's here. Yeah, Ji Young is the one who introduced us to it as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, she could share a lot on that. Yeah, hopefully.
Oh, I wouldn't do it justice. I haven't been involved in it for a while, but yeah, they should. Mike and Tom should definitely do that.
Okay, fair enough. So I don't think Mike is here yet. So I will take.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I see. Okay, there he is. Okay, Mike, could you introduce yourself super briefly? Well, we won't have you present yet, but if you can just brief, in a minute, give a summary of what Democracy Vouchers are and introduce yourself, and then we'll hear from Fatima, one of our candidates, or actually our only candidate tonight, her take on them.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Michael Drashkovich. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a co-lead of LA for Democracy Vouchers. Put really quickly here, Democracy Vouchers is a campaign finance model based on Seattle's system, where every resident in the city is given 4 $25 vouchers to contribute to any campaign.
This is Mongolian.
Oops.
Oh,
Sorry.
And what it's done is it's helped give everyone the ability to donate, not just the wealthy. And it's allowed anyone to run based on their network. So you don't need to know wealthy folks to mount a competitive campaign, a successful campaign. So we're really excited to bring the idea here and get your thoughts on some of our latest updates.
So Fatima, I just love to hear, I don't think this would apply to you because you're running at the state level, but this is something we're talking about doing in LA, which would affect, I imagine, anybody running in the city of LA. So I just love to hear your thoughts on that and any other. I know you talked a little bit about Citizens versus United at the beginning of the meeting, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on democracy vouchers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in full support of it. I've been at least one of their events and to support it. I think it's great. I think from what I saw, the results in Seattle, it had great results of, not maybe having those candidates win, but definitely mounting a competitive campaign and setting the groundwork for good working class candidates to win. LA has public financing, but I don't think that's enough. I think this will also increase voter turnout. I think it showed that in Seattle. Like I think, as I think it was Mike who was talking about, I'm so sorry,
Yes.
I'm on my phone. Okay, Mike, who said, yeah, I think they showed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that it did lead to more participation of folks, right, who might not vote, maybe low propensity voters, because you feel like, okay, now that I gave this candidate some money, I think it was maybe $25, even whatever it was, I should go vote, I should go fill out my ballot because I'm invested, right? So I think it'll increase turnout as well, in addition to allowing, good candidates to have a more competitive campaign. From this at the state legislature, I was looking into this, and I think I learned this from the Democracy Vouchers team. So thank you for this point of information. Part of my platform is I wanted to get public financing of elections in our state, as well, which is kind of similar to the idea behind Democracy Vouchers. But I heard that I think in the 80s it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, there was a law passed to kind of not allow that to happen at all, and we have to get that on a proposition. But that's something I want to help support, because I just think anytime we can allow folks that are not career politicians or, or just like, we have access to having anyone being able to run for office, right? Who don't necessarily maybe have the large networks of what it takes right now to run for office. I just think anything that brings more power to the working class and getting kind of community rooted candidates in is great. And I think Democracy Vouchers is one way to get there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I think I don't think Danielle is here. I don't know what happened. As much as I do, but I think so Fatima, where did you go, Fatima? I don't see you. You moved. Oh, there you are. Do you want to just say a couple final comments and then we'll let you go, or you can stay and talk to us about democracy vouchers if you like.
Yes, I will. I'll definitely stay on. I'm definitely happy to listen in and learn from all of you. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I just want to say I'm really inspired. Like, I think this is such a great space with the work that you're all doing in your neighborhood councils and your community. So thank you for that work. I honestly see you as doing the greater work than even I'm doing right now, because I think it takes many of us in all our different spaces. So those of you that even didn't ask questions, thank you. A big thank you to the work you're doing. I really appreciate it for our state, for your communities. It's a collective effort, so thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously you learned a lot about me in this call. I hope you see I'll be a candidate for all of you over, profit-based interests. What I do need is support. So I hope it's okay that I ask for that here, Lisa, because if you liked me and what I stand for and what I say, I'll drop my website. Please donate. My last election when I was, 9 points short of winning in the pandemic, I had, an IE with big oil, supporting, my opponent and, and stuff like that. And, so I really rely on grassroots donations to get the word out, and invest in my field team and send out my mailers. So if you like what I say and you want to see me elected, please help me these last few days. If you can't donate, please volunteer on my website. I'll drop that in there as well. Yes, all my policies are on there. You already got a good hang of what I would stand for and how I would lead. And just, a big thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for staying. And Danielle, this is our last meeting before the election. It's kind of crazy, but it's true. So we will not be able to hear from her. So I apologize to those of you, and I know there are many of you who came because you knew she would be joining us. But I'm happy you're here anyway. If that is any...
I saw that Albert said that Danielle was trying to log in the chat.
Yes, I saw that a while ago, and that's the last I saw. So that's all I know. Okay. So Mike, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Did you want to share some slides? Where did Mike go?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll just say a couple of things. So Los Angeles for Democracy Vouchers has presented to us before. So we don't want to give the same presentation, but we did want to provide you an update, a brief overview to make sure we're on the same page and give you an update on the latest research and thoughts about next steps. We actually thought we were going to be taking a vote on whether or not the NCSA supported this, but we are not doing that tonight. We will learn more about what the next steps are. And what I'm hoping we can do tonight is really think about this deeply, because our representatives will probably be asked to vote on this before we have another conversation. So think of this as the conversation before we normally vote, if that makes sense. Because we don't know when we'll be asked to vote, and it could be time sensitive, and it could be done via email. Okay, take it away, Mike.
Okay, you one moment. Okay, share here. Great. And can you all see the slide here?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all for having us. Again, we're big admirers of the work that you do, and want to just say thanks again for co-hosting our Promise of Democracy Vouchers in Los Angeles event in June. We had a really good turnout, recruited our first set of volunteers from that event, and so we're just very grateful. I also want to shout out to Fatima, who spoke at our outdoor briefing at Pan Pacific Park in February and gave a real testament to the reality candidates face organizing at that level with no public financing. And then I also want to just say thank you to Jiyoung, who's been advising us, and then also one of our volunteers, Margie Hoyt, who's in the room. So we are Los Angeles for Democracy Vouchers. We are organizing to end mass exclusion from campaign finance. My name is Mike Drashkovich. I'm a co-lead on the project. I just want to give here's the agenda for today. I know a lot of you have seen our presentation. For those who haven't, I'm going to go briefly through our findings, looking into LA's campaign finance system, reiterate the goal of what we're trying to accomplish, discuss a couple paths forward, why we think Democracy Vouchers is a reasonable solution for the issues we're facing, talk about Seattle's success, and also just plug Oakland has on its ballot this November a Democracy Vouchers policy. So come November, we could be seeing the first Democracy Voucher system enter California. Very exciting. And then I want to give an overview of our strategy, just how we're thinking about advancing this idea. And lastly, share ways to get involved. So to start, just to reiterate our goal, by 2024, we want to introduce a democracy dollars-based campaign finance system by either ballot initiative or city council referral. Our hopes with that type of campaign finance system is that more dollars would come from residents like us, not folks living outside of Los Angeles, as it currently does, more dollars from regular people, not special interests, more dollars from across the city, reflecting our diversity, not just the wealthy white neighborhoods. And yes, as Fatima said, we also hope this system boosts voter turnout. We have really exciting data from Seattle suggesting it can. And then lastly, what matters most is the people who end up getting elected are reflective of our diversity in the city and prioritizing the needs and policies important to working Angelenos and people of color. So that is our framework here. To reiterate the problem, we looked at 2020 Los Angeles election, the 7 city council races, 4 LAUSD races. There was a total of $32 million in political spending. In this data, we looked at donations coming from folks like you and us, you and me, and special interest groups. A quick aside, in April this year, we also looked at campaign finance data around the current then primary campaign and saw a lot of similar trends as this data here. Our plan with that is to, after the election, go back into the data and just kind of issue a summary report on where the money came from. So most people think this is where the dollars come from for all of our city elections, but the reality is it comes from across the country. And we broke that data down by zip code, and it turns out 70% of dollars come from outside Los Angeles City. The highest giving zip code in 2020 was Park City, Utah. Bentonville, Arkansas was also notable, both giving to LAUSD candidates. We wanted to understand, though, when dollars came from Los Angeles, how much of it what was the total share made up? And you can see here, it was this blue chunk right here is just 10% of all contributions came from individuals like you and me. Thankfully, because of our matching system here, you can see it was bumped up to 16%, but that's only 16% of every dollar comes from people in Los Angeles. The rest comes from special interests inside and outside LA and people living outside of Los Angeles. So we're also curious, when money did come from LA, this blue sliver here, where was it coming from? And so on the left here, you're going to see racial demographics of the city of Los Angeles. The darker shade is a higher percentage of people of color. And on the right here, you're going to see donations per capita. And you can tell it's an exact inverse image. LA is 70% people of color, but campaign donations come from the whitest areas. So just reiterating, this is a very, very short summary of what we found. To learn more, please check out our report on our website. It's called Elevating New Voices. It details all of this in much greater detail. But to summarize, who donates right now? It's a ton of outsiders, not city residents. It's special interests of regular people. When it is coming from when it is coming from within Los Angeles, it's coming from wealthy white neighborhoods. And then we also looked at who participates in elections. And across the board, it's been very low turnout generally. That's changing as elections have moved to even years, but we still expect to kind of lag. And then it's also wealthy white neighborhoods participate at a higher rate. And then finally, who gets elected? LA is not immune from trends affecting other cities and other areas. When you have a campaign finance system that allows the wealthy to run, it's people with connections to wealthy white neighborhoods and men and incumbents who end up getting elected. So again, all this is detailed more in the report, but I just wanted to summarize for the folks who weren't at our last briefing. So what can we do? The first thing that usually gets suggested is End Citizens United. You all on this call know that that is affects part of the problem, unlimited spending by corporations and individuals. Very important, but not something we can do on our own in Los Angeles. So we totally support that, but we're interested in what we can do as Angelenos in our backyard. The second is 100% public financing. We'd like to get to this as an optional program, but unfortunately as just a total ban on all private contributions is unconstitutional right now. So that's another long-term fight. And third is a matching funds program, which is what we have right now, and it helps a little bit. But as you saw from the data above, there's still a lot of problems. So our solution is Democracy Vouchers. It's an idea out of Seattle, passed in 2015. Every resident in the city gets money to give to campaigns. So Seattle, every candidate or every resident gets $25, 4 vouchers of $25, and they can give it to anyone. We like this idea because all of a sudden anyone can donate. You don't need disposable income to be a donor, which is huge. Then any network is now a fundraising network. You don't need to be friends with the wealthy to mount a successful campaign. Third, it's an optional program, so we can put in extra rules. There can be contribution limits, spending limits, public debate requirements, which has been a big issue on the campaign trail. And lastly, as we talk to more advocates in LA, we're looking at exploring a hybrid unified program where you would have some element of vouchers, some element of matching funds. The goal here is just to reward candidates that are backed by genuine community relationships. So if we can find out what that would look like by talking to candidates who've run in the past, that's what we would want to come to. So I want to quickly go through what we're seeing in Seattle. It's very exciting. So the first big takeaway is, again, the system was passed in 2015 and it's run in 3 cycles. They've seen a record number of voucher users, so 21,000 in 2017, nearly doubled by 2019, and then they added another 10K in 2021. What's important to note here is 8% of the voting age population used a voucher versus 3% who donated via cash. So all of a sudden, with this new system, just more people are involved in the donation part of the campaign, which we think is really, really important. The second thing is, compared to cash donors, voucher users remain more diverse and more reflective of the voting population. So by introducing vouchers, their campaign finance system is already more representative, and that's something that we would want. Next is the racial donation gap. There still exists a slight gap, you can see here, with 1 to 2% of white residents, but it's within striking distance, and it's shrunken every year since the program's been around. The big lesson here was working with groups on the ground to figure out effective strategies to get to make people familiar with democracy vouchers. So we would start with those strategies, not add them the second and third year. Most significant, in my view, is a drop in outside contributions. So city council campaigns in 2017, 32% of all contributions came from outside the city. By 2021, that dropped to 7%. In mayoral campaigns, the same thing. It's 23% in 2017. That's also dropped to 7%. Now, that we can't contribute everything to democracy vouchers, but this is a substantial drop. And the years prior, 2015, going back to 29, we have data. These numbers all stay pretty steady. And in fact, the last, so 2017, 2019, and 2019 and 2021, we saw 7% and I think like 9%. So it's really exciting what happens when you have money in your backyard to help finance your campaign. But probably the most exciting, and Fatima alluded to this, is that non-voters who use their vouchers became 6 to 10 times more likely to vote. So when we talked to candidates before, the first thing that resonated with them with this program is that their organizing and fundraising work could be collapsed into one activity. So your volunteers are out knocking doors, they're raising awareness about your campaign and fundraising. What this data suggests is it collapses not just those two activities, but also GOTV, meaning whoever you contact is likely going to vote. And if they donated to you, it's probably going to be you. So we're really, really excited about this. And this 6 to 10 times right here is unheard of in this field. So that's just the data. I also want you to hear what candidates themselves have said. So this is Councilmember Teresa Mosqueda, who spoke at our briefing. As a 36-year-old first-time candidate, winning the election was an uphill battle. After an 8-way primary race without earning the endorsement of Seattle's 2 largest newspapers, I still came out 5 points ahead in the primary. What I did have was the power of the movement that the democracy vouchers helped fuel. I ran a worker-powered campaign with union members, women, people of color, healthcare advocates, and urbanists who went door to door talking about the importance of the race and democracy vouchers. And then in 2021, Seattle saw its most diverse mayoral field ever. Andrew Grant Houston, who is an activist, said, "My campaign wouldn't have been able to persist without the democracy voucher program, which allowed me, a Black Latino first-time candidate with 0 net worth, to hit the program's primary cap first." So next up, I just want to quickly go through our strategy. Because campaign finance is governed by the charter, we would need a charter amendment. There are two routes to amend the charter. The first is a city council referral, which requires a majority. The most recent example of this is Measure BB, which passed in June 22nd with the 67% of the vote. The next is a ballot initiative, which requires 15% of registered voters in the city of Los Angeles. So this is different from an ordinance, which I believe is 15% of the voters in the last mayoral election. So there's a significantly higher threshold for charter amendment ballot initiatives. As of April, it's about 2 million registered voters in the city of LA, which means we need 323,000 signatures. For a successful petition campaign, we probably need to gather around 450K signatures. That's to account for that additional amount of signatures, is to account for invalid signatures or errors. People say they live in LA but don't, and repeat signatures. this is a very, very expensive process. So that's what we're looking at. The third route, which we've begun to explore with folks at Unrig LA and other places, is as a city charter review commission, which is governed by laws, California state laws, and can, we believe, send charter amendments directly to the ballot without having to go through council. So then our landscape analysis, you all are experts in this. You don't need me to tell you what this could look like, but if we have a status quo council, our goal is to increase public awareness of democracy vouchers, especially if it passes in Oakland, get that word out, start to engage with more council members. Then we also see this a challenge of there's a lot of folks interested in amending the charter, and we need to, as a city, have a better sense of what everyone's priorities would be for if we have, you know, a pot of money to run a charter amendment campaign, which policy would we want to advance first? So that's what we're looking at in scenario one. For scenario two, with a more open council, the challenges are still the same. It's just that we now have a city council referral as a possible option, but we still need to figure out what people's priorities are and where the public's appetite is for some of these more structural reforms like redistricting, council expansion, RCV, charter review commission. So for us, we are working on generating public awareness by just meeting with various groups in LA. We're working and briefing all the LDs at City Hall. And then we're hoping to launch a poll soon to get some clarity on where the public stands on a lot of these charter issues so that we can get smarter about what we might want to run first. So how to get involved? We'd love for you to join us if this is something you're interested in or want to contribute. We meet every other Tuesday at 5 p.m. Our next meeting is October 11th. To join, just go to this link here and fill out our Airtable form. Also, if you haven't watched our briefing, it's lademocracyvouchers.org/briefing. Our report I've already plugged. We also have an op-ed that explains our argument at Cal Matters. And then lastly, this charter presentation, which was given at the Neighborhood Council Congress 2 weeks ago, I believe, was really, really good. And I will put this link in the chat because I highly recommend folks who are interested in charter reform to check that out. That's it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. So I'll be frank, when this was presented to us earlier in the year, I assumed we would just vote to support this at some point. And then we discussed it more in depth within the advocacy committee. And I realized that some people were not as keen on it as I am. So that's why I really wanted them, Los Angeles for Democracy Vouchers, to come back and really give you folks an opportunity to ask your questions or express your concerns or doubts. So I really hope you do, because this is probably our last opportunity, as I mentioned. Charles.
Hey, Mike, thanks very much for the work you're doing on this. And just to explain my position on this, I'm asking this question from the standpoint of somebody who's generally supportive of this and all the goals that you have. That being said, one of the things that I think we really have to focus on is figuring out ways to get money out of politics as much as possible. And one of the criticisms I've heard about your proposal is that what this does is it just creates an arms race, even more so in terms of getting money into politics. And the people who have the power will still have just as much power. They'll just find ways to get more and more money. So over time, that $25 becomes less and less meaningful to the point where it's not really significant. And I'm curious what your response is to that.
Yeah, sure. So it's a good question, and one we get a lot. I think the way we think about it is, Democracy Vouchers is a public-based financing system. So it is about removing private dollars from, or counterbalancing private dollars until we can work on End Citizens United. And it's probably the most transformative thing we can do within the constraints of the current Constitution, is what we've felt. We would love to get all money out of politics, but that is a much longer term fight. And so in the near term, if we're going to fight for a campaign finance system, our thinking is that a matching funds system plus or slash democracy vouchers that utilizes the best aspects of both could help ensure that real community-backed candidates are winning, not folks who are mounting campaigns because they're wealthy or whatnot. So yeah.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yes, so I'm very supportive of increasing involvement, spreading around. Were folks in your group involved with the last city charter effort prior to 1999? And I have a reason for asking.
No, prior to 1999, no.
Okay, so that's the charter amendment that, among other things, the last charter amendment that, among other things, created neighborhood councils. And that process was messy in that not only was there a charter review commission, there was also a competing city council charter review commission. When I say messy, they both have the ability to put forward measures or the whole politics thing. So I know that it's politics.
Right.
Just looking and see what happened for the recent mobility plan initiative. But just know in terms of your contingencies, you may want to add that to your as you look at the contingencies. What happens. The other thing is that even though some things may pull out as the voters polling may come out as a majority, for example, the expansion of the LA City Council, ultimately, when it came for the vote, I'm talking about historically in the past, that's when the folks that like the status quo put in the big bucks and put in the arguments of it's going to cost us taxpayers lots of money. They probably said it would be hurt public safety. Who knows what they said. So that's just one of the perils of being connected to things that are really, really opposed by the power structure. It makes the overall effort that much more difficult, as opposed to some of the things you listed there that hopefully there wouldn't be as much of a lineup. So anyway, my 2 cents. Research the 1999 charter reform battles.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, we've been speaking with and learning a lot from Rob Kwan and a few others who are actually at that charter presentation I put in the chat here, that have documented for us, that what went down between the two charter commissions. And I put that as a third path. We're not seriously considering it right now, but given the amount of charter amendment proposals that various groups are talking about right now, it may make sense to at least raise that prospect with folks. On the second point about something polling well and then not materializing in the vote, our hope was to do a sort of a deliberative poll, which is different than just a standard poll. And that you poll people initially on their opinion on something, and then you bring them together to discuss the idea with other experts and also other Angelenos. And so they're exposed to some of the trade-offs and counter arguments that would exist. And so the idea is the initial poll isn't really where people stand. You want to expose them to arguments from both sides, and then you poll them again. And so our hope is to do something like that across these issues so that at least some folks in Los Angeles are starting to get exposed to these ideas and their trade-offs.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have, I would love to hear, especially if you're a representative, honestly, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, if this sounds like a good thing or a not good thing, or if you have questions, because it's helpful for me to have a feel for the direction our folks are going in. So does okay, we've got hearing from a few folks, or Glenn, Glenn, is that you're supportive, I think is what you're saying. Lori, go ahead.
Just a clarification. I'm sorry, maybe I missed it, but where is the funding coming for these democracy vouchers? I apologize if I missed that.
Yeah, so one thing, we haven't decided that yet. We have a list of 30 questions about the specific policy design, and one of those is funding. So we're waiting till there's, room to bring together a coalition around this to decide that fact. Seattle used a property tax increase, the smallest tax increase in the city's history, to finance the program. And so we would want to kind of gauge where we think that might be appropriate. It's important to know too, this program passed in Seattle. It wasn't the lead element of the ballot initiative, the actual ballot language. They had I think it was a ban on corporate contributions at the top. And so it's called a quote sweetener. We would want to lead with something else as well, because democracy vouchers is very wonky. And so we'd want to kind of go out front with something that is more interesting and something that most voters will feel like is important. And then inside that have the meat of the campaign finance policy.
And Mike, didn't you say at the beginning of your presentation that currently this is unconstitutional as outlaid by the Supreme Court?
No, that would be that would be a ban on all private contributions. So right now, all public finance programs have to be optional. Just like LA's matching funds program, it's an optional program. And so democracy vouchers would need to be optional as well.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting. Joanne.
I wanted to ask you if you've done any sort of dive into what scenario of corruption would look like, because LA is a more corrupt city than Seattle. And I mean, I just can see, ethnic groups getting together, getting some sort of bribe to use their vouchers for a certain candidate, not necessarily because those people believe in that candidate, but because there's some other, party or something that they can go to, or, some bonus that they can get for doing this. And so I'm just wondering if you've investigated this, given that it's not the most straightforward city in the country.
Yeah, no, that's a real concern. And I think the way we would want to address that is in the rules for the program. Once you opt in, you have to abide by certain rules, and we would want to make sure that in that section, we kind of harness everyone's creativity about ways this could be exploited, and then have a way to quickly amend it if it, does become evident that people are using it for corrupt reasons.
I mean, it may not be the candidate, him or herself, that is, doing the corrupt thing, but it could be some interest group that supports a certain candidate, but may not even be communicating with that candidate. It just could be an outside group that says, okay, we want this candidate to win for whatever reason, and if you give your voucher over to this candidate, we in return will give you such and such, and it may not be publicized enough for any watchdog to catch it. So that's my only concern. I mean, I saw your other presentation, I love the idea, but I worry that it could get corrupted here.
It is a more than reasonable worry.
Mike, what does Seattle have any protections?
I know they were worried about, quote, bundling, which would allow groups to kind of go out into the community and collect people's democracy vouchers. And so I believe they have a ban on that. I could be wrong about it, but that is, and then it's also the way they dealt with other forms of possible corruption is it's very transparent. So, you know, once your voucher is used, there's a database like we have through the Ethics Commission that details when something was spent. And so everyone can kind of see where things are flowing. But yeah, for this, I think what we want to do is in our policy working group, bringing folks together to think about all the ways that it could be manipulated and just ensure that the ballot initiative text addresses that to the best of our knowledge at that point. So it's really kind of, we're deferring that to a coalition conversation.
Okay, thank you. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I have like a whole long list of questions. Some of the answers you may not have, but let me see if I understand this. So we would be talking about $100 worth of vouchers, correct? You mentioned 4 $25 vouchers?
Correct.
Okay. Applicable to both primary and general elections?
Yeah, that would be a policy design choice, but yes, that would be.
Oh, okay. All right. So for instance, you know, all right. So in terms of the pot of money from which this comes, from whatever source, are these vouchers available, I guess, primarily to registered voters?
Again, that would be a policy choice. In Seattle, it's all residents.
Oh, well, are we talking about residents under the age of 18?
I believe theirs is capped at 18, but that again is also a policy choice.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is if you've got, say, 2 voting age adults and 3 children, do they get 5 vouchers? I mean, these are the sort, you see what I'm saying? You know, we start to get into equity issues. You know, is it made available to anyone upon asking, or is it a first, let's say, the total amount is capped at, say, $10 million and it becomes the first, you know, come first serve situation?
Yeah, so the way it works in Seattle is they've set aside a pot of money for the voucher program. And if a candidate, and so it's not like the city pays for all the vouchers that have been distributed. And there is a limit that I believe once a voucher candidate hits, they're kind of released from the program so that they're not stuck. This is how Seattle decided, so that they're not kind of penalized by resonating with, you know, Angelino. So we could come up with very creative ways to design that. So, you know, candidates that were able to hit that threshold first, whether in the primary or the general, are maybe receiving matching funds, you know, get access to that type of program. We don't quite know yet. That's kind of further out, but what we're you know, hopeful about is this is all very creative, and as long as we're working with like campaign finance legal folks to make sure it has passes muster, then we think we can do some exciting things with it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea in terms of it becoming a, you know, more participatory democracy. Right. But my one concern is that you're going to have a limit on it. And if you get into the first come, first serve thing, you know, obviously the people who are the most well-informed,
yes,
are most politically active, you know, you could find yourself in a situation where the majority of vouchers are just distributed, matching that map of wealthier, you know, whiter contributors, for example, just because they're better informed and have better access and more interest, for example. So
yeah,
good luck on figuring this out. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Doug. That's a real concern and something we're very aware of in Seattle and want to address.
That's something I had not thought about. I think that's super, 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 super important. So that gives me pause. So thank you for raising that, Doug. Mindy, go ahead.
So campaign finance reform is so important. I mean, critically important, and we need to do something. I have some of the same issues, concerns that were just raised. I mean, Charles raised a concern about it and Doug just did. So in concept, giving more people input and influence, absolutely. But I'm just not sure whether or not this has been flushed out. So I just have some concerns about this particular approach. So I would need more information.
Okay, that's super helpful for me. Thank you, Mindy. Jiyoung.
Yeah, so I think people tend to be resistant to change, even though we know we need change. And I think that you know, this is an idea, and there's a model for it that has been successful. And what is being said is that people can be at the table to have input on what this would look like. And if people are hesitant to, be on board with it now, I mean, why not then just be involved in the conversation and then have a vote about the end product instead of just saying, just like nixing it without having the conversation. Because the problems that we have, we need new ideas and new solutions, because clearly what's happening is not what the majority of Angelenos or even Americans want. So I just want to point to Public Bank, which we have talked about here before. There's the city council unanimously or close, I think it was unanimously or close to unanimously, but pretty sure it's unanimously approved a viability study. And so that's also just an idea, but they were willing to explore it. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thanks, Jiyoung. And just to reiterate there, yeah, we have not decided any of the policy details yet. It's all incredibly open. So these suggestions we have in the chat, I'm making note of all of them so that we can make sure, those are part of the questions we bring to a coalition of folks when we decide the ballot initiative language.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mike, I think we're going to wrap up because I'm hearing from folks that some folks want to speak about Danielle Sandoval's candidacy, although she is not here.
I'm seeing in the chat. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so you get where I'm coming from. Okay, so thank you, Mike. That was super helpful for me. Frankly, it raised more questions for me, which is a little sad, but overall very good. So thank you, folks, for being such deep, critical thinkers. And we will keep tracking this, and we'll keep figuring out how we are going to play a more formal role one way or another as the NCSA. So thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Have a good night.
All right. So we do have, I want to get into the advocacy stuff in particular, because there's so much going on with the news today. I want to hear from all, and we have Jamie Wong from City Planning. I hope is still here. We want to hear from her about a couple of our advocacy and energy issues. But I totally am really sorry about what happened tonight, and I don't, of course, know what happened tonight. So if there are folks who want to weigh, who came to ask Danielle a question or want to share something, let's take a few minutes to try to do that very quickly, and then we'll move on to our program and committee updates. Danielle and Desi, I think you wanted to talk about that, right? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Desi Sarcona. I'm the Vice President of the Harbor City Neighborhood Council. Last month, we voted to become first-time members of the NCSA, and I was appointed to represent the HCNC, and I look forward to working with all of you. However, I'm here tonight as an individual. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I worked with Danielle Sandoval from 2018 to 2021, and she served as our president for the Harbor City Neighborhood Council during those 3 years. During those 3 years, I went through a lot of trauma. I was bullied by Sandoval and her allies on the board. It was very difficult to accomplish anything in the community, especially as being the outreach chair. Wherever Danielle could put a roadblock, she would. Whenever Danielle could make you look like a fool, she would, if it made her look better. She would not purchase approved items out of spite. She would not put requested items on the agenda out of spite. She would break our bylaws time after time. She went so far as representing our board at a Hank meeting with an unapproved motion, supposedly approved by our board, again, out of spite.
And I'm sorry, I maybe shouldn't be interrupting, but I'm conflicted because we do have our community agreements. So I'm going to ask you to make one modification. This might sound a little silly, but if you could not talk about the out of spite part, because that's, you know, you're not in your head. So if you could just speak to the facts, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. That might be difficult. Okay, so Danielle, we had a lot of issues on our board, and she happened to be the driving force for causing division and causing our board to be dysfunctional. At one point, and this is a fact, I was concerned for my own safety as I was being stalked by Danielle or someone she knows. Danielle sent me an email, and I'm happy to share that email with all of you, with photos of myself and other board members having a conversation in a parking garage with commissioners. And in that email, under the photo, it said, "PSA, sweetheart, there are no secrets in the harbor." So I found that very frightening. Ironically, those photos were taken outside of a commissioners meeting where our board members pleaded with the commissioners to make changes to the code of conduct because of all the problems we had on the HCNC. So I am concerned if CD15 elects Danielle. I'm concerned because she doesn't know how to lead, in my opinion. I'm concerned because she, in my opinion, is a divider. And I am concerned because, in my opinion, she is vindictive. She has not been known to be transparent as a leader, and unethical. I'm concerned because there's a lot of mistruths. I'm concerned because she thinks she could do whatever she wants. I'm concerned because she could not lead or run a small business. And I'm concerned because she committed wage theft and still hasn't paid her employees 8 years later. UTLA Union dropped their endorsement for Danielle yesterday because of the wage theft. So if you want CD15 to thrive, please don't vote for Danielle Sandoval. If you went through what I went through, if I went through this and it was solely just to stop her from being elected, then so be it. I can deal with that trauma that I went through, but I will continue to share my story. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Desi. Does anybody else want to speak on the issue? Liz, go ahead.
My experience working with Danielle, who I've known since, I think, 2015 through Budget Advocates, has actually been very positive. And I find the revealing of the wage theft issue suspicious in terms of the timing. I find Danielle passionate about the concerns of her community. I also have had experiences peripherally with wage theft, and there's a lot of complicating issues. And I would like to hear her side of that before people make decisions. And it hurts me because wage theft is a huge problem in our city, in our country. But I also feel that her opponent is not the best person for CD15, even, and I'm speaking not as a CD15 member, but somebody who's familiar with a lot of these issues because I deal with things on a citywide level. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Liz. Lori.
Are you speaking to me, Lori Arnold?
I am.
Okay, I just know there's a few Loris online. My name is Lori Boardnave Arnold. I am a board member of the Harbor City Neighborhood Council. I also served the same amount of time as Desiree Sarcona. I am speaking on behalf of myself as an individual. I know Danielle Sandoval personally from both sides of the fence. I was, and I take responsibility for my own actions. However, I was led to believe a lot of things. I was told things that were not true to bait me against Desiree. When I finally realized how I was being used, and came to my senses, then I started getting bullied. I had gotten tired of watching them, and it was hell. I'm not going to lie to you. I got tired of them, watching them when I was on the other side of the fence, purposely bullying, belittling, manipulating. I can confirm everything that Desiree has said is true. As I said, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I got tired of it. And I even, excuse myself, I interrupted a meeting because I couldn't take it anymore. It was, and there are a lot of other board members who felt the exact same way, but were too afraid to say anything because they didn't want to get bullied in the same manner. As far as this timing of the wage theft, honestly, all candidates, if you are running against someone, my late husband ran for city council. He also ran for state assembly as a grassroots candidate. His name was Caney Arnold. He was also on the board. He passed away a little over 3 years ago. He also went through the same things that I went through with her. As a candidate, you do look into the past of who you're running against. And you better, when you enter a race, you need to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed and ready to know that someone is going to look into your past. There's nobody sat there and wondered, oh my gosh, 7 years ago, Danielle just might run for city council and we're going to keep this under wraps until she does run. It's just called she's irresponsible. The woman did not. And the only reason why her business went out of business, because she didn't comply. You look on state documents, which you cannot dispute it. The receipts are there. You look on state documents, she did not comply with filling out all her proper paperwork. She did not comply with paying the state franchise tax board their annual dues, and her business was suspended. She did not dissolve the company. The company is still open. If she paid all her stuff, she could probably reopen. However, the state suspended. It is her who kept this under wraps. I cannot see a candidate that has so many things, and there's lots of things, that she is just not a fit individual to even represent mothers. Tim's family is behind him, campaigning all the time and everything. And I don't know, I maybe I shouldn't get into the personal stuff, but I just know what this woman did to our board, and she ripped it to shreds all over. And I know I was on the other side of the fence over her friend not getting the chair position for outreach, and Desiree did. And that's what started everything. I know this. I was on both sides of the fence. I do not feel she is fit. There's nothing underhanded about this wage theft thing coming out during this candidacy. Had she never run, you know what? I'm going to tell you something. The one good thing
Okay, Lori, but I
this,
need you to wrap up very quickly. Sorry.
Oh, okay, I will. The one good thing that I feel that is actually coming out of this whole thing is that hopefully these people are going to get paid, because she's finally addressing it. As far as her taking responsibility, she denied it. She said that she didn't know anything about it. Then she said she found out about it in July. And all of a sudden, it's like she's apologizing. You cannot believe a word that comes out of this woman's mouth. I cannot trust her, and you shouldn't either. Thank you.
I'm having a very hard time knowing what is within our community agreements and what is not, just so you know.
Okay. All I know is I could speak from the heart and speak honestly. My story is the same from beginning to end. Hers isn't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Glenn, go ahead, and then we'll move on, I am hoping. Go ahead.
Thanks, and I will keep this brief. And I do want to say that, you know, for an election of a city council member, I'm hoping we're all definitely listening to the local neighborhood councils from the area. But having said that, I want to just give you, for my experience, as Liz did, having served, I think, for as long as Danielle was on the neighborhood council budget advocates. I did take a year off, at one point. I don't know if that was, anyway, it doesn't matter. All I wanted to share was the 15 city council members are, just like the budget advocates, only smaller, more powerful, obviously, representatives of their communities. And I just wanted to share that for as long as Danielle was on the neighborhood council budget advocates, there was nobody who was speaking up for the harbor and the concerns and the port pollution and issues consistently from Danielle. Could she do more? What she's doing within the local area, I don't know. I'm just speaking as a reference from how she's represented as one of the 3 budget advocates from the harbor area, including Watts, for the sorry, not including Russ, because it's the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment Service regions that the budget advocates go by. So it's really Region 12. So it's basically the harbor neighborhood councils. So I just wanted to just say that the folks when you get to city council, getting to city council, of course, is a very bruising and political thing, and we've seen it. I've in my initial years of being involved, there was a council member who called the husband of a community activist at corporate headquarters, Bank of America, called the president of Bank of America and said, "Your wife is a radical and causing problems in my district." What was she doing? She was fighting to expand a parkland, get more parkland, right? So that's the sort of stuff that these politicians, and I certainly will include part of the Good Old Boys Network, the other person there. So just know, I'm not speaking to Danielle on everything happening there, but I'm just saying that the 15 councilmen, you need a fighter there. You need a fighter who is going to represent your community. And from the perspective of budget advocates, that's what I saw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Okay, Doug, I hope you can be succinct. Go for it.
Succinct is the word. I've been doing this neighborhood council thing for 20 years at Coastal San Pedro, off and on. I've worked with 4 now city council members for CD 15. I have known personally Danielle Sandoval and worked with her. I've known personally Tim McOsker and worked with him. I will say I've probably disagreed more with Tim over the years than with Danielle. But having said that, and having witnessed what has happened at various neighborhood councils where people have served, understanding that Tim McOsker was there working with Jim Hahn when neighborhood councils were first formed 20 years, and his belief in the neighborhood council system, his support of Greg Nelson when he was appointed as general manager. I will say that either of the candidates will be a friend of neighborhood councils. But if there is anything we have witnessed today, it is that when it comes to our elected leaders, character counts. It counts tremendously. And on that basis alone, I have endorsed Tim McOsker and I will vote for him. And regardless of what anybody thinks, on that basis alone, he deserves the seat.
Okay, thank you. It was really great to hear from so many of you who were here for that part of the conversation, and I'm sorry it didn't work the way it was supposed to, but I'm glad that you were able to express your thoughts. And let's move to wrap up the meeting. I don't know if we can do it in 5 minutes, but let's try, I would like us, oh gosh, where are, oh, wait, I gotta find my slides. It's sure not where they should be. So I'm gonna talk while I'm looking for the slides so I can multitask. So we are not doing cool blocks well, we're wrapping up the current cool blocks we have, but we are not bringing on new cool blocks. We are hoping to move to a different platform and hoping that we will start it up again in the very near future. Well, I don't know how soon it will be. Honestly, in a perfect world, I think it would be January, but I don't know. But please stay tuned, and we can talk more when we have more time. Advocacy, we submitted a statement not liking the LA Zoo's 1.5 proposal. We've got some challenges with the draft wildlife ordinance. Jamie, are you still here?
Yes, I am here.
Sorry, things are running, we're running a little short. This is Jamie Wong, our liaison from city planning. And Jamie, I've learned, I met with the mayor, I don't know if I told you, but I met with the mayor's office last week on the draft wildlife ordinance and got a bit of an update. Do you know, I don't know who knows more, you or me, or who has the most recent information right now?
Well, I actually came prepared to share updates with the group. I don't want to take too much time because I know we're, wrapping up here. So to summarize, FYI, if anyone has to hop off, I will be sending an email to the group summarizing updates from city planning for the month of October. But in a nutshell, the current status that I have to share about the wildlife ordinance is the team is currently still chugging away at going through all of the public comments and feedback we received since the hearing that was held earlier in the summer. So we're continuing to go through all the feedback we received. We received a large volume of comments, so it's taking a little bit of time to go through them. So that's what we're doing over on the staff end. I don't know what Lisa's update is, but I hope
So
that
I'll interrupt because we're so tight on time. The city planning is going to do a third draft. So they are making revisions based on the feedback they're getting. And we are not anticipating to meet our initial deadlines. We were planning on getting this done before Koretz left office. This is his baby that he introduced in 2014. It's probably not going to happen because of the feedback we've gotten from residents in the area. So if you have a strong opinion on this, maybe it's probably not too late to either submit a comment yourself or get your neighborhood council to submit a comment, because frankly, we need the help. We are concerned that it is going to be further weakened.
Lisa, I had a quick update on the oil ordinance as it's going through the process.
That's when we get to Energy Committee. Is that okay?
Do you want me to hang on because I do need to hop off shortly?
Yes, let me move quickly. We're talking about Olympics. We're talking about the Sepulveda Basin. We're talking about biological diversity. We're talking about lobbyists, and we're talking about what happened today. Please join us for our next meeting. Dan and Jamie. Jamie, why don't you go first?
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So currently the draft ordinance is on its way to Planning and Land Use Committee after it has been heard as of last Thursday by the Energy Committee. It may go through one more committee, but I don't have a date set for that yet. And I know we're trying to get it through Plum Committee as quickly as possible. So this legislation is moving forward. We're making progress. If you're interested in hearing what the committee members had to say about the proposed ordinance, I believe the recording of the committee meeting, audio only, is available on YouTube, uploaded by our LA City Clerk. So that was the quick update I had. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie.
Dan,
Dan, you wanna?
Sure.
Question. When you say it's available on YouTube, under what would we look at? Where would we find it?
I can drop the link in the chat if that's convenient.
That would be great.
Okay, sure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
I don't have much to add other than there's an election coming up on November 8th, and Proposition 30 is worth a look if you care about energy. But it's a state issue, so we can't really talk about it.
All right, thank you. Is that it, Dan?
That's all I got.
Thank you. Muriel.
Hello. So we had already had our meeting this past Thursday. Faith Mira had come in to talk about possible ways to expand EV chargers in Mar Vista. And Philip Brown had spoken more about his Flow Boulevard update, and everyone is welcome to hit me up if you have any questions about that. And for our next meeting, we might look into like the climate mobilization organization. Sorry. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Muriel. Joanne.
Yes, the Trees Committee generally meets bi-monthly. We're not meeting this month. Next month, I may do a tutorial on how to use the tree inventory. If you need to learn to use that sooner, shoot me an email. There's my email, trees@ncsa.la, and I can run you through it over the phone. Probably take 5 minutes or so. It's not that hard. As you probably know, Charles and I each did workshops at the Congress of Neighborhoods, and they were recorded. Mine is in workshop session 1 and his is in workshop session 2. His was very good. Mine starts at 23 minutes in, and I want to warn you of that. They should have lopped off the 15 minutes early that they asked me to be, because it's just me greeting people coming in. So start at 23:56 if you're going to listen to it. My whole PowerPoint is in there, although I didn't get into some of the SB 9 and 10. I just ran out of time. And I didn't do my trees inventory tutorial that I had been asked to do because their site was down. I want to alert you that I chair the CFAC Ad Hoc Enforcement Subcommittee, and we're meeting this Thursday at 1 p.m. And I'd like to acknowledge all the Trees Committee members who have been out there reporting tree problems. And, we have no enforcement system. And I started this committee to help the people on our committee and all Angelenos who have concerns about the fact that tree violations are not enforced. So this Thursday at 1 o'clock, shoot me an email if you want the agenda and Zoom link. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Super fast. Folks, our next meeting, I think, is going to be in person, hosted by an organization that Charles is affiliated with. More to come. It'll probably be November 12th instead of November 13th. And vote. And I'll put the eval in the chat one more time. Please do complete the eval. And Rosalie, you would like to say something, I think.
So I just was looking over my ballot and noticed there's an LA City proposition for park funding. Hadn't heard about that at all.
Oh, I haven't seen that at all. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Huh. Okay, guess we have some work to do. Okay, any other announcements? Anything anybody want to close with? Go ahead, Liz.
The Rec and Parks funding would be the largest single increase, I believe, in our taxes. And while we definitely need money invested in our parks, I think that there are better ways of doing it. And so people should really look solidly at that, because I strongly support our parks. I just don't think that this particular motion by the city is in the best interest of the people.
Okay, thank you. Glenn, close us out.
Yeah, just put a plug in for the work of the budget advocates, which does cross through a number of the departments that relate to sustainability related issues. And that is that we have completed our 2 trainings with the CAO's office, that's the city administrative officer, in terms of revenue generation and expenditures and the budgeting process. Those are posted on the Budget Advocates website, budgetadvocates.org. I'll put it in chat if I have time. And then we had a session regarding meeting with the city departments, which we are about to begin. So if anyone is interested in sitting in, tag team, or even doing more. We are looking for folks who have an expertise, passion, or otherwise want to, do that for any. So our committees basically correspond with the 40 different city departments. We're not doing all of the city departments, we're doing most of them. And those meetings will begin very shortly for the rest of October into November. They'll be resulting in reports with recommendations. So even if you don't participate in the meetings, recommendations from the Sustainability Alliance related to the appropriate city departments would be helpful for us to consider as we bring those forward. Our recommendations do go to the mayor, the CAO, the city council, and ultimately constitute the white paper document. So anyway, this is a very critical time as this is for next fiscal year's budget, by the way. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Stay tuned. We've got lots going on in our city and lots of change to come very quickly, I suspect. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.